The full moon in Virgo on Saturday, February 24th, opposes Saturn and Mercury and trines Jupiter, encouraging us to get realistic and organized as we follow our dreams and build a better future. Do not underestimate the power of a well-written to-do list. As a Virgo, I can confirm that those are pretty important. Let's take a closer look and break it down for all 12 signs. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you like my work, please take a minute to support me by leaving a like or a comment, subscribing, and pressing the notification bell. All of that really helps, encourages YouTube algorithm to show my content to more people. You also have the option of saying thank you by buying me a coffee. I really appreciate that as well. Before we dive in, a couple of announcements. I am calling February the month of love, and during the month of February, I am offering $20 or $40 off my relationship readings. If you'd like to get an in-person consultation, use the coupon code in the description to get $20 off. And if you'd like a recorded reading for both singles and couples, you can book a recorded reading and save $40. If you're single, I will take a look at your natal potential, describe the transits coming up, and talk about your love life in general. If you are in a relationship, I will break down your compatibility, cover some of the challenges, and talk about the gifts your relationship has, as well as give advice. Additionally, so that recorded reading can be found in the shop section of my website. Additionally, in the shop section of my website, you can also find my magical creations, such as my candles and oils. Since we are talking about the full moon in Virgo, I'd like to highlight my Mercury in Virgo candle. It smells like fresh cut grass, and it's perfect for anyone needing help with focus, attention to details, planning, and figuring out your strategy for things. It can help you get organized, more precise, and better at writing. And it's especially great for people born with Mercury in Pisces or Sagittarius. Those are Jupiter ruled, and Jupiter is the sign of coherence and kind of larger purpose, versus Mercury is all about the details. So in the Jupiter ruled signs, details sometimes escape the attention. So if you're born with Mercury in Pisces or Sagittarius, you may know that about yourself, that sometimes you forget sort of to pay the bills or to keep track of the little financial things. So this can be just the candle for you. As well as if you're born with Mercury in the dark houses, 6th, 8th, and 12th, or if it's aspected by Saturn, conjunction, square, opposition to Saturn. This is the one that you want to get. I also have Mercury in Gemini in case if you want to explore. Gemini tends to be a lot more fluid and flexible, so it's great for problem solving, versus Mercury in Virgo is great for narrowing things down and doing research and sort of being more clear, precise, and concise. So the full moon, this full moon is happening on Saturday, February 24th at 7:30 a.m. Eastern at 5 degrees Virgo and 22 minutes. So you will feel it the strongest if you have planets or angles such as your ascendant, descendant, midheaven, IC at about between like 3 and 8 degrees Virgo, and also other mutable signs such as Pisces, Sagittarius, and Gemini. We will all feel it, right? In general, the full moon is the tension between the sun, the consciousness, and the moon, the emotions. The sun being in Pisces together with Mercury, together with Saturn, is all about feeling, emotion, connection, flow, imagination, versus the moon in Virgo is all about organization, analytical skills, details, sort of everything that is needed in order to make your dreams a reality. Pisces without a Virgo, it can be just a dreamer, right? But you add a little bit of Virgo into the mix, and there's that ability to get organized, to figure out a strategy, to figure out a plan. But the inner tension between the dreamer and the realist, between the believer versus the doer, is quite present at this time, and we are encouraged to find a better balance, to figure out how to make our dreams come true. It's complicated by the fact that the ruler of the full moon is Mercury in Pisces at the moment, and Mercury is in detriment in Pisces, suggesting that it may be harder to separate facts from fiction. So that's why you need a little bit of Virgo energy, but it's still, you know, the ruler is in the sign that is operating in the realm of feeling, in the realm of hunches and guesses. So one of the lessons here is trying to figure out what's true and what is not true. You will need to double check the data. You will need to become more sort of self-aware on some level. There's also an opposition to Saturn in Pisces, which is suggestive of a reality check, of some kind of bubble bursting. Very tense, very sort of intense energy. I do like that the full moon is supported by Jupiter. So the next, you know, one of the aspects the moon is making is the trine to Jupiter, which is kind of uplifting and encouraging and suggestive of whatever you are releasing, whatever you're clarifying is meant to build a better future, is meant to bring more stability in your life, which is what Jupiter in Taurus is all about. We are completing the cycle here that got started around September 14th when we had a new moon in Virgo. So it could be worth it looking back and figuring out what was starting in your life around that time. Virgo is very much about health, about routines, about problem solving. It's the sign of editors and writers and sort of, you know, what kind of projects were you working on? What was happening in your health? What kind of routines and bad habits you were exploring? In general, some of my thoughts about this full moon, I think with the tension between Pisces and Virgo full moon being ruled by Mercury in Pisces, you are encouraged to let go of the search for perfection and to understand that you don't always have to have 100% figured out in order to take action. So if you accept the way things are as is, you may relieve some of the tension, right? Instead of being kind of stuck between the rock and the hard place, or being stuck between the dream and the perfect vision of Pisces and the groundedness of Virgo, try to be present while still seeing the vision. Do not just like get too bogged down by details or too sort of like escape into the future too much. Like try to be grounded, try to be accepting, and still focused on the future while being in the present. So I think Virgo can be like really good at accepting, not themselves, sometimes not the other people, but it's like, it can be very grounded, it can be very rational and very sort of present. And so the invitation here is to step outside of the dream world for a moment, to maybe fine tune, maybe adjust, maybe separate facts from fiction, like I said, and gain some clarity. So let's take a look at the 12 rising signs and give you some ideas on what this might be about for you. First rising sign, as always, Aries rising. This full moon is happening in your 6th house in opposition to Mercury and Saturn in the 12th, and there is a trine to Jupiter in the 2nd. So the tension that gets highlighted here is between your mental health and your dreams and your maybe fantasies and the real world, the groundedness, the health, the habits, the road you take to your job, right? Like anything that is sort of physical and tangible. And the full moon in Virgo is encouraging you to get organized in your everyday life, to focus on your health, to maybe get over a health issue, to kind of implement some kind of better health protocol, better routine. If you've been thinking about making some kind of adjustments, like, you know, you've been thinking about quitting smoking, or you've been thinking about letting go of a job that is frustrating, this is the time when you are encouraged to quit smoking, or you're encouraged to at least come up with a plan that can be helpful for you. The invitation here is very much like, how do you find good balance between working really hard and resting, between kind of chugging along and being productive and successful, but also going on vacations, between like being, you know, a good worker, but also being a good human where you take care of yourself. The trine to Jupiter in the second house is quite nice. It could suggest a completion of some kind of long project and a sense of fulfillment. Even a financial reward can be coming around this time. A sense of overall kind of confidence and self-love is possible with Jupiter in the second house. If you, let's say, let go of a toxic situation at work or let go of a bad habit, I think the trine to Jupiter is suggested that the changes you're making, that they feel rewarding and make you feel happy. If you are a Taurus rising, there's a full moon in your 5th house, and this is suggestive of changes in the sector of romance, pleasure, and children. So for some of you, this could be a sign of pregnancy. This could be a sign of some kind of creative fulfillment. Maybe you've been working on a project that you're getting ready to release. Maybe your child is going through some kind of transformation. Your romantic life can be reaching a sense of culmination. The fact that the full moon in the 5th house is opposing Saturn and Mercury and the Sun in the 11th is suggestive that you need to balance your outside aspirations, your goals, and your even role in the collective, right? Like if you are a president of the housing association, but you also have a child that needs you, and so you are kind of experiencing this tension between your outside goals and aspirations and your immediate life, and needing to figure out a better balance there. There's a trine to Jupiter in the 1st house, so I can also see this as some kind of personal transformation, a decision to have more pleasure in your life, decision to choose parenthood. And parenthood could be anything. It doesn't have to be the literal parenthood, right? Like if you're listening to this and you're like, I do not want to have kids, then it's not a literal child. For you, it's maybe more about a creative project or a passion project that you've been working on. Maybe you've been trying to become a yoga teacher. And so the full moon in the 5th house in the practical, organized sign of Virgo is an invitation to first find balance between your goals and your romantic life or your parenthood life, your, search for pleasure. And second, to have a plan to figure out sort of maybe step-by-step strategy of how to get you to that success mountain. Let me know how this resonates down below, and what have you started in your life in September when we had a new moon in Virgo. Next, we have Gemini rising. There's a full moon in your 4th house in opposition to the planets Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in the 10th house. So here you're looking at the tension between your public life and your private life, and you're looking at how those two mesh together, how they work together. The full moon in the 4th house can suggest a completion of a home project. Maybe you've been painting your walls, or you've been looking for a different home, or you've been questioning where is your place of living in general, right? Like, are you meant to be in the country where you work, or are you meant to go back to your country of birth? So there's a lot of kind of, like I said, tension once again, and very much the planets in the 10th house, I think, are serving as like a reality check, as an important place of attention as you're building your job, as you're focusing on your career advancement, as you're figuring out what you want to do. You are also encouraged with the full moon in the 4th to make adjustments to your living situation. And also just ask yourself, what is comfort? What is home? What is security for you? And then what needs to change in your immediate environment in order to help you achieve it? There's also a trine to Jupiter in the 12th house, which could be suggestive of your living situation changing. 12th house represents places of isolation, foreign lands. So maybe you're choosing to move. Maybe what you considered your home is changing, right? On like a spiritual level, when you're healing a wound and building a home for yourself, or on a literal level where you are immigrating to a different country and sort of finishing some kind of long process of assimilation and trying to find ease and comfort there. And please let me know what was happening in the sector of home, family, and living situation in September when we had the new moon in Virgo. Next, we have Cancer rising. If you are a Cancer rising, there's a full moon in your 3rd house, and it opposes Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in your 9th house. So the full moon in the third house can bring up some kind of exam. If you've been studying for something, it could be the time when you take an exam. It could be the time when you start a business, if you have been playing with the idea. There are transformations happening in your everyday life, in your schedule, in your transportation, in your route to work, right? Something in your immediate environment needs to be released, needs to be transformed, needs to be accommodated for the pressures you're experiencing in the sector of travel, in the sector of education, in the sector of legal matters. You know, an example of that would be, for example, you are busy studying something and the full moon in Virgo is saying that it's not realistic to try and do the full-time education and also your paper route, or you kind of drive to different locations at work. So maybe you decide to start working from home a little bit or transform your schedule on some level. The full moon in the third house can also suggest changes in the lives of your siblings, changes in your neighborhood where maybe, you know, there's some kind of new situation being implemented. Maybe, yeah, if you live in a neighborhood where neighbors are tightly knit and close to one another, there could be some kind of transformation in their life. But also, I think like just a need to examine your everyday life and your flow and see what is helpful versus what is not helpful, and maybe kind of release some of those things. There is a trine to Jupiter in the 11th house, suggesting that ultimately you are working towards new dreams, new connections, new friendships, and that if you focus on what you're trying to achieve, you will. And take a look back at mid-September when we had a new moon in Virgo to see what kind of themes were introduced and what kind of new beginnings were happening in your life at that time. If you are a Leo rising, there's a full moon in your second house of money and values, and it opposes Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in the 8th house. So with the full moon in the second house, we are looking at the need to be realistic about A, what's important to you, what is of value to you, and B, about your financial situation, right? Saturn, Mercury, and the Sun are all in the 8th house. You may be addressing debts, you may be handling your relationships with other people, negotiating, compromising, starting new partnerships. So with the full moon in Virgo, there's potentially a need to get more serious with your finances. There's maybe a need to talk to a financial advisor, right? There may be a need to transform your work situation if you feel like it's not supportive, if you feel like you're not getting paid or not getting compensated enough, right? The full moon in Leo could also be, the full moon in Virgo could be the time you get a payment for something, or like you're celebrating payout of a big debt if you've been really focusing on that, or you're making a big investment. Perhaps you're investing into your career, or you are getting compensated based on your job performance, and some kind of like, some kind of financial, professional transformation can happen around this time. Take a look back at what got started in your life in September 2023 when we had a new moon in Virgo. What kind of financial changes were happening? Did you start saving for something that you're now ready to pay for? Or did you work on something that you're now getting paid for? Next, we have Virgo rising. So if you are a Virgo rising, there's a full moon in your first house in opposition to the Sun, Saturn, and Mercury in your 7th house. And here you're needing to get realistic about your health, about your well-being, about your look, your personality, and your desires. And it is likely that these realizations can be coming from your relationship changes, from changes connected to business, from changes connected to your partnership of some kind or contract you're signing. Take a look back at the middle of September when we had a new moon in Virgo. Have you started some kind of personal project? Have you joined forces with somebody? Have you even started a new relationship or invited some kind of new beginning into your relationship? Because the full moon in your first house can very much be the time you complete some kind of important chapter. The trine to Jupiter in the 9th house is suggesting that the chapter you're transforming could be connected to travel, could be connected to teaching other people or studying yourself. Travel, I feel like I said that already. Legal matters, writing and publishing. So some kind of personal transformation that maybe redefines your role. But the tension, like there is definitely some tension between your desires and your goals, and perhaps the goals and the needs of the relationship, or even responsibilities you have to other people. You may be kind of gearing up for a new chapter in your life, but you still have to contend with your partner and their goals, and maybe responsibilities you have to your business connection, something like that. Please let me know how this resonates down below. If you are a Libra rising, there is a full moon in your 12th house, and it opposes Mercury, the Sun, and Saturn in the 6th house. So here we're looking at your mental health, at your need for rest and your need for escape. And there's an encouragement to be aware of that, and perhaps to let yourself take a break and to let yourself relax, and to maybe even appreciate how far you've come and be nice to yourself. There's a lot of pressures at work, right? There's a lot of kind of things going on, maybe even some kind of health concerns that you're dealing with. Perhaps other people are depending on you, but the full moon in Virgo, even though it's Virgo, it's still happening in your 12th house. So there is an invitation there to examine how much time you're dedicating to work and how much time you're spending resting. How are you talking to yourself? How critical you're being of yourself, and perhaps release some of those self-defeating tendencies, some of those bad habits, and embrace better relationship with yourself so that you can create a better balance in your life and sort of have a better reality. Take a look back at September 2023. What kind of realizations did you experience in your life? Maybe you've realized that you have a bad habit that you need to get rid of, or you started therapy, or you started some kind of spiritual practice. This full moon is definitely an invitation to kind of, keep going and perhaps even commit to things more. There is a trine to Jupiter in the 8th house, which could be suggestive of definitely some kind of spiritual orientation. 8th house represents mysteries and hidden things, healing. Both of those houses have to do with healing, and potentially financial rewards, partnerships that are of spiritual kind, that are of like more esoteric, more unique nature. Please let me know how this resonates down below. Next, we have Scorpio rising. The full moon in Virgo happens in your 11th house in opposition to the Sun, Mercury, and Saturn in your 5th house. Take a look back at September 2023. What got started in your house of friendships, in your house of networks, in your house of social media, hopes and dreams for the future? Because around the time of the full moon, you can be completing a project. It could be an end of a project you worked on with a friend, maybe some kind of group initiative, like a podcast you started with somebody, or like volunteering if you've been volunteering. A dream maybe come to fruition, right? There might be a change to your friendships in general, maybe like a need to reassess. The opposition to the planets in the 5th house and the trine to Jupiter in the 7th is suggesting that there's a lot going on in your house of parenthood, in your house of romantic relationships, business partnerships. And so the full moon perhaps is inviting new protocols in your friendships and a need to maybe try to balance friendships with your changing romantic status, as well as your dreams, right? Like if you are becoming a parent, or if you are getting engaged, or if your partner is moving and you need to follow them, there is definitely a need to be more honest with your friends and figure out how the dynamics will change, as well as like to figure out how your dreams will be impacted by the changes that are happening in the other part of your life. If you are a Sagittarius rising, the full moon in Virgo highlights your 10th house of career, status, and reputation. And it, of course, opposes the Sun, Mercury, and Saturn in your 4th house. So here you are experiencing some kind of professional peak, professional change, perhaps a need to rethink your career life based on your home life or what's happening in terms of your living situation. I have a friend who's a Sag rising. She's currently traveling in Thailand, and it was supposed to be a 1 month trip. It turned into a 3 month trip. So, you know, in her case, there's definitely an adjustment that's required to working long distance potentially. So take a look back at September 2023. What was happening in your professional life? Have you started something? Have you taken on a project that is not even just professional, but something that you're known for? Started exploring sort of new passions, new hobbies? Because around the time of the full moon, it can be reaching, like I said, a culmination. Maybe you're getting recognition, maybe you're getting rewarded, maybe you're getting a new opportunity, like something is changing that is requiring you to move, or you are becoming more, you know, if you're a young parent and you went to work, maybe you're realizing that you want to spend more time at home with your child. Or in general, some kind of serious realization about comfort, security, personal life is affecting your career. There's also a trine to Jupiter in the 6th house, which is even more suggestive of you committing to something and working on something long term and investing into your professional future, or investing, you know, like the trine to Jupiter in the 6th house can also suggest that you're becoming more interested in health, in wellness, in diet, and you're exploring those kind of interests, and perhaps your career is transforming because you no longer want to work as much, but now you want to commit to spending time with family or commit to exploring your passions that do not involve your 9 to 5. Let me know how this resonates down below. For the lovely Capricorn risings, there's a full moon in your 9th house, and it opposes Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in the 3rd house. The full moon in the 9th is suggestive of a completion of a cycle of growth. 9th house represents travel and adventuring. If you have been adventuring, maybe you are coming home, or you're realizing that you want to take your love for travel and turn it into a full-time business. Completing an education chapter is possible here. Especially take a look back at mid-September 2023, what got started in your life, right? Because the full moon tends to represent completion of the cycle started around the time of the new moon. So graduating, right? Finishing some kind of a legal battle, or signing some kind of contract, making some kind of legal commitment to something is likely. If you've been writing a screenplay or a novel, around the time of the full moon could be the opportunity to present your work. The ruler being Mercury in the 3rd, the Sun and Saturn being in the 3rd is kind of suggestive, I think, of a need to be realistic of what is possible versus what is not possible. There is maybe an invitation to, you know, make some moves connected to education, travel, legal matters that then make your everyday life easier, because with all of this action in your 3rd house, your sort of mental processes are heavier right now. You're doing a lot of work. You're maybe working through some kind of issues. And so the 9th house full moon is inviting you, I think, to examine your beliefs, to examine anything that might be holding you back and let that go. And the trine to Jupiter in the 5th house, I think, is encouraging as well, because the trine to Jupiter is quite a supportive element, and with Jupiter being in your 5th house, you are more determined to have a good time. You're more determined to enjoy life instead of just being the hard worker that your ascendant is saying you are. So better opportunities for balance here. And let me know how this resonates down below. Next, if you are an Aquarius rising, there's a full moon in your 8th house, in opposition to Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in the 2nd house. So Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in your 2nd have been potentially putting some kind of stresses and pressures, especially Saturn, on your finances. So maybe you've made a big investment, right? And you're paying it off. Maybe you bought a house. Maybe you're getting really serious about paying off debt. Maybe you started a partnership and more is required of you. So the full moon in the 8th house is encouraging you to get realistic about resources, make a plan on like how to pay off a debt that you took on. It could suggest a need to figure out the dynamics in a partnership, right? If you started a business partnership with somebody else, the full moon in the 8th would be a suggestion to revisit the rules of the partnership, or maybe kind of even get out of that partnership if it's a contract you signed that was only lasting 6 months and you realized you no longer want to work with this person, you don't want to extend this. The trine to Jupiter in the 4th is suggestive of like either there is family dynamics you're navigating, or neighbor, sort of roommate situation dynamics, or even real estate payments, right? Like needing to kind of get more serious when it comes to building your perfect home, finding your perfect roommates, figuring out your perfect living situation is likely here. And please let me know how this resonates in the comments below. Last but not least, if you are a Pisces rising, there's a full moon in your 7th house in opposition to Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun in the 1st. So this is about your relationships and partnerships, your love life, but also your agreements with other people, your contracts that you have signed. Take a look back at September 2023 when we had a new moon in your 7th house. Have you started a relationship? Have you started a partnership? Have you signed a contract? Have you gotten in touch with some kind of advisor, right, that maybe you started working with? Because around the time of the full moon, you can experience a relationship reaching a peak and either separating if it's not meant to last, or moving to the next level. It could be the time when you break the contract, or you commit to a contract, commit to a partnership. The opposition to Saturn, Mercury, and the Sun in the 1st is very much you are looking at yourself at the time that you have, at the patterns that you have, and how is your life and your time that you have available connected to your partnership? How can you make sure you're handling your own life and taking care of yourself? And like, what is real, right? Like, is it realistic to be like healing and maybe working full time and dating someone who lives in a different part of town, or is it not? Do you maybe need to communicate more honestly, have a better conversation? And it doesn't have to be romantic. It could also be about your work commitment, your work relationships. There is a trine to Jupiter in the 3rd house. So I feel like even if this energy feels a little bit tense, you can talk through it. You can have a good kind of sense of understanding and come to a compromise with people in your life. And let me know how this resonates in the comments below. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy this full moon in Virgo. Like I said, just try to focus on accepting yourself. Make sure you're not eating unhealthily, because sometimes moons in Virgo give us tummy aches. So take good care of yourself, lean into self-care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.